Hey, good evening. It's Nigerian XJW Speaks here, otherwise known as Chigo. I hope you are doing well. I feel like I've not made a video for you guys for a while because I think I had one that was done without visual, and I had the one for my DNA test, and so it feels like I've not sat down and done a video for you guys, but we're doing it today. I hope you are well. I hope you're keeping well. I hope you're having a good week. We are halfway through September. Yes, we are getting there. Little update how we're getting on. You know how I do. I like to give you an update on things. So my son's back in school, which is great, and some sense of normalcy. Like I can actually work with a bit more time to actually focus in, which is nice. Karate started back up. Boy, do I need it. I was worried I wasn't going to fit into it. The outfit anymore. That did fit in. It was fine. A bit more snug, but it did fit, and it's good to be back there having that activity. So we had our first class back yesterday, refreshing myself on all the moves, all the steps to get back to whatever to the belt I'm on. So that's good. That's good. I want to hear, how are things for you guys? Are things going back to some sort of normal? Have you restarted anything that you weren't doing before that you can now do? I want to hear it. Okay, so today, I want to talk about something that's it's quite in depth, right? And it's something that you are going to get it if you were born into the witness faith. If you're just passing by, I don't know if it's going to make sense. I don't know if it's something you can relate to some other things, but how it came about, I was watching Sister Fister, on YouTube. A video she put out maybe a couple of weeks ago, and she was going through her mom's stuff. So her mom passed away, and she was going through the items that she had, and she opened this letter that apparently her mom had written when she was in secondary school. And in this letter, the mom was saying that Bridget didn't want to go to university because she wanted to be a missionary. She wanted to spend her life teaching people about Jehovah. And for some reason, as I was watching that, as she was processing the emotion she felt as she was reading that, I could feel it. And I had this shudder come over me. I don't know how to describe it. This is overwhelming sense of, it's like someone having a flashback. It was like someone having oh my goodness, right? And the thing that came up for me, the word that came into my mind was PTSD. PTSD was like, no, trying to fight that. We can't use PTSD to describe the JW experience, but I just couldn't shake off that feeling. And so I went digging. I went to refresh myself on PTSD because unfortunately I do have a little bit of do I call it experience? We have some history. We have some history from years ago. And, I studied pharmacology, if you don't know that. And so it was something that we touched on. So I had to sort of go back and look at it and see if there were any similarities. And so it's just opened this web of things just to explore. And I want to hear from you as well, right? If you, after hearing this, think that the concept of PTSD can be applied to some of the emotions and some of the feelings and some of the experiences we had from being raised in the witness faith. And then maybe, because I think a lot of the time, part of the moving forward, part of the getting back to a healthy state is being able to properly understand what it is that happened, not just on the outside, but on the inside. And then we can go about correcting course, right? And unlearning things and fixing it. So when I was looking up PTSD, I'm not going to go into everything about it. I've just picked out some key words that felt like they related to me. So there is talk about an experience that causes stress. Obviously, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. And so we are talking about a situation that was stressful, either in a moment in time, or it could be a repetitive pattern of being stressed. If you were raised a witness, if you went through the whole process of it, it is a stressful situation. The demands that the organization has of you is stress inducing. I don't know how else to put that, and I would like to hear someone argue that. I feel like it was a very stressful situation. Some words that came up in the research were words like overwhelming. It's when you're in a situation that was overwhelming. The whole experience of being a witness is overwhelming because of the demands that the governing body make of you in every single area of your life. Another word that came up was frightening. A frightening experience or sets of experiences. What came up for me there was thinking about some of those scary thoughts in my head of Jehovah deciding to strike me down right now. That is frightening. That is terrifying. And I think you'd probably be hard pressed to find someone who grew up in the faith who did not once have the thought cross their mind that maybe what they're doing right now could lead to them being struck down dead, especially when allegedly there's these cases in the Bible where that's happened. And so if you have grown up in this cult as a child, your mind is processing those. That is frightening. So that's another tick box there. There is also the pattern of, if it's a case of repeated abuse, that could then be classed as complex PTSD, when it's not just a one-off thing, but it's repeated. Most of us were in this religion for years. It's abusive. It's abusive in terms of the way it takes advantage of people, the way it hijacks people's thoughts. And I don't know how else to put it. It's an abusive, manipulative relationship that they have with their members, especially when you come out and start digging into the hypocrisy, the double standards, and the way they take advantage of the people. I don't know how else to describe it. Another thing, flashbacks, right? So going from describing the situation, or if you could say the causational factors, to how it manifests. So we have things like having flashback. I think what happened when I was watching that video from Bridget, that was a flashback. That was the flashback of, I'm not going to get upset, as she was reading that and realizing that here was her life being decided, not by herself, not even by her mother, but by the standards of a group of men who don't know her, who don't care about her, and that she can't fight it. I mean, yeah, she did find a way to get out, but when you're in there, that sense of being dominated and suppressed, I think of being trapped, being suffocated, that moment of her life being decided, I could relate to that. And I think I was having a flashback there because that is something that I have had moments of growing up there, that feeling of being suppressed and having barriers put for you, and there's nothing you can do about it because this is bigger than you, it's bigger than your parents. So what are you going to do about it, right? Other symptoms, trying to numb yourself. We have talked about the issue of alcoholism within the witness faith. I have a video on that. I will link it somewhere, as well as something about hypocrisy. I've had a few videos on those. I will try and link them. But wanting to numb yourself because you can't deal with what's happening. Either whether that's when we're in the faith ourselves, or if you just left and you haven't fully worked through what was going on. So when I look at those criteria, when I look at those tick boxes, I can see how the experiences within this religion would fit that of PTSD. I'm not here to make a diagnosis, but I can see the similarities. There is a part of the brain called the amygdala, a part of the brain that is triggered. And for me, which is what was triggered that day, it's the part of the brain that regulates fear, emotion, behavior. And I definitely think that was triggered that day because that feeling of, oh no, whatever happens, I do not ever want to be in that position again. So some of those feelings and some of those things that I'm going to go into, just to wrap up, some of the specific things within the religion that will have you feeling that way. So I have talked about the feeling of being dominated and being suppressed. There is also the knowing that you can't just say yes to things. I'm talking about the child, the young adult growing up, even the adult sometimes. But then, if you've come in as an adult, you've made that choice, although there can be other factors. Again, I've made a video on this, but that feeling of knowing that you can't just say yes to things. You have to go check a book. You have to go check a website to see if something is okay. That's not healthy. The example that came to mind for me, I was thinking of the Leah Remini documentary from, I don't know if it was last year now, and ex-JW the Fifth was sharing how he was a child in school, little boy, and this other little boy from school was saying he was his best friend, and he had to tell him that we can't be best friends. I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and basically we can't be best friends. And I can remember having similar experiences where you know that you can't just say yes, you can't just be free for completely harmless, innocent things that you have to go check. There is the feeling that's imposed on you of wanting to make you feel like you're on the outside. Not because you want to, but because somebody else says so. You're meant to be no part of this world. And so that constant feeling of being on the outside, it's not nice. It's not healthy, especially when that is not something you want, because there is a time and place to stand alone, to stand in your truth. If you have conviction for yourself, I'm not a fan of following the crowd all the time, but when it's your choice, not because someone else said so. And this is what happens here. So what I'm going through right now is some of the experiences that I would class as the causes you would have during the time period of being a witness that would then translate into experiencing some of the symptoms that are similar to PTSD. There's also the feeling of not having control over your own time. Your time is not yours. You are, if you're doing something that is fun for you, you should feel guilty because you could have been preaching in that time. You could have been doing personal study in that time. You could have been conducting a Bible study. You could have been something to benefit the organization. And so your time isn't yours. And that's one of the things I appreciate so much from being out, having my time back. The thought of having to work hard Monday to Friday, and then the weekend have this feeling of being compelled to go flog someone else's literature. I'm so grateful that I don't have to do that. But that feeling of not having your time being yours, the stress as a child, the ridicule of going to where your classmates are, people that children can be mean sometimes. We can be honest, kids can be mean. And so having that ridicule week in, week out, when in my opinion, it's completely unnecessary. Mind you, kids will find a reason to bully no matter what. But when you're constantly going through this week in, week out, and you're meant to embrace it over a period of time, repeated exposure, there will be an impact combined with everything else that we've talked about. And lastly, knowing that you have to stand out. It's sort of similar to the being on the outside, but not just being on the outside quietly, like you have to stand out. Something that comes to mind for me is in school with the worship times or the national anthem and having to stick out like that. And it's humiliating, right? It leaves you with a feeling that you can go back to those moments. You have flashbacks. You have, well, maybe just me, flashbacks to walking into school and going, here we go again. We'll have to deal with this again. And sometimes I choose, right, to be flogged for being late so I could miss the morning worship, the anthem part of the morning, and come in after that and be flogged for being late rather than to get there on time, which I could have, but go through the humiliation of standing out. This is not a sub story, by the way, because as part of the recovery, and where I think this also ties in again with all these symptoms, really, like it makes sense to have some kind of therapy after leaving this group, just some way of talking to someone to work through it. And I have done that. I've done that, and that's why I'm saying this is not a sub story, but it's just interesting how that moment of watching that video just brought all of this back, and I wanted to talk about it. So I want to hear what you think. I've been going on for quite a while now. What do you think? Do you think there are enough similarities between the experiences of someone who has been this religion for a long time to PTSD? Do you think that it can trigger PTSD for some people? Did it do it for you, or do you think it's completely far-fetched? Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you understand where I'm coming from? I want to hear your thoughts. But ultimately, as you know, what I do here is focus on the recovery. But like I said at the start, part of being able to move forward is to understand what happened and the full ramifications of what happened, not just on the outside, but also on the inside, and see it for what it is and give it the type of solution that it actually needs. That feeling that I had watching that video, it was powerful. It was powerful. And just really stayed with me. I don't know who needed to hear this. I don't know who this will benefit. But like I said, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your comments. Thank you for all the love with the last few videos. They seem to be resonating. And of course, me finding out that Nigerian XJW Speaks is not fully Nigerian after all. There's all these other bits there. But, you know, it is what it is. We are citizens of the world, I suppose. So, yeah, thank you for all of that. Subscribe if you haven't. Give the video a like. You know, why not give me a thumbs up? That would be great. Thank you. And share it if you know someone that you think this will benefit. And I want to hear your thoughts. I will put some videos here for you to watch next if you're sticking around. And I'll speak to you soon. Take care, guys.